The whole idea of this session was to make use of the old Queen Elizabeth Planetarium, which was going to open in June of this year. Of course, COVID has delayed everything. These were intended to be an in-person session where people would actually come down to the QEP, and we would talk about what was in the night sky over Edmonton that month, and if conditions were appropriate, we would set up a telescope or two and just go outside and have a look. Of course, what the heck? Oh, I have to admit. Most of the information I'm going to talk about comes right out of the Observer's Handbook, which is put out by the RASC every year. I've got this message in front of me here. Usually comes out in the fall. For some strange reason, I haven't actually received mine yet. I don't know if anyone else has, but hopefully it's on its way. So let's just go over a few things we're going to talk about for December. So December is short days and long nights. The highlight of December 2020 is going to be the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which are going to make a very close pairing in the evening sky. They're already quite close together, but they're going to get even closer, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Mars continues high in the early evening sky, but it was at its brightest in October, but it's starting to fade as the Earth pulls ahead of it in its orbit and leaves Mars behind. But it's still pretty bright, and if you have a telescope, have a look. You should still be able to see some features on the planet's surface. Venus is blazing in the pre-dawn sky early in December. It's been riding fairly high in the morning sky for a number of months, but it is starting to set as it orbits around the sun, and it's going to stay fairly close to the horizon for the next few months until it swings behind the sun in March. The winter solstice is on December the 21st, so we have our longest night and shortest day. So I'm going to do our planetarium part here now. And okay, I'm using Starry Night here. And this is the sky over Edmonton as it will look tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So nice and early in the evening, unlike when we first started this in the late spring, when I'd be showing the sky at 11 because it wasn't dark enough until then. So the main area of interest is right here. And why isn't it zoomed? There we go. Is Jupiter and Saturn are coming into a conjunction where they will appear extremely close together, getting at their closest point on the 21st of this month. In reality, they're nowhere near one another. They're about 500 million miles distant, Saturn being the further planet from Jupiter. But from our point of view here on Earth, they'll look like they're right next to one another. We have Mars still in Pisces, still blazing away, although it has gotten considerably fainter and smaller. If you look at it in a telescope, it's got noticeably smaller in the last couple months, again, as Earth pulls ahead of it in its orbit. For telescopic planets, we've got Neptune here in Aquarius, and Uranus kind of stuck between Aries and Taurus. We're now seeing the magnificent winter constellations coming up at 6 o'clock. The Pleiades is now well placed in the evening sky. Taurus with its bright red star Aldebaran. And I'm just going to advance the time a little bit here. Do a little more. Let's go 9 o'clock. Okay. Now by 9 o'clock, Jupiter and Saturn are set, but, oh dear. Okay. Orion is coming up well above the horizon now. We've got the moon in the waning gibbous phase, still fairly bright. Oh, and if you want to see what it looks like tonight, this is what it would look like tonight at 9 o'clock. The summer triangle, which consists of, my screen is flashing here. Deneb and dear me. I don't know if my Vega and then Altair is down in here. It's setting off into the west, saying farewell to us. It was quite prominent in the fall. This constellation here, Cygnus, was almost directly overhead. Now let's just go back to 6 o'clock here again. And we're going to watch Jupiter and Saturn. I'm just going to zoom in on them here. I'm just going to freeze them, center them. Okay. And if we advance through the days, at 6 o'clock, they're lower and lower and lower. And Saturn is closing in on Jupiter. The moon goes zipping by on the 17th. Well, doesn't zip by. The moon is also in the same field on the 17th, which would make a nice photograph, until the 21st, when let's zoom in real quick here. Now, in this view, they look far apart, but they're actually not. And I've got a graphic later on in the program about that. And if we continue to the end of the month, Christmas, it's just above the horizon. And by the end of the year, at 6 o'clock, it's gone. So if you wanted to see Jupiter and Saturn pulling away from one another, you'd have to go a little bit earlier. 5 o'clock, and sky's still fairly light, but you can see that Saturn passes Jupiter and continues on. Okay, I'm gonna go to the morning sky for a little bit here. I'll make it at 7 a.m. And we'll make it tomorrow. Okay, computer simulations are kind of misleading. Venus appears very, very low on the horizon. It's actually, I see it when I look out my bedroom windows when I get up in the morning, and it's fairly high up. It's easy to spot. It looks like an airplane landing light. We had Mercury last month and Venus making a nice pairing, but Mercury is set now. Now through the month, I'm going to advance it again by day. You'll see Venus at 7 o'clock every morning is going to be a little bit lower and lower and lower every day through the month. And if we make it 7:30, we'll make it a little higher here. And what it's going to do, it's going to reach a point, and then it's just going to kind of, let's make it a little later. It's going to just kind of skirt along the horizon. Trust me. It'll skirt around the horizon. Venus will be heading toward it's in its orbit going around to the backside of the sun, but it won't do that until March. So it's going to be very, very tough to see for pretty much all the way through January and into March. You'll need a very clear horizon to the clear flat horizon looking to the east to make it out, and it'll be just before the sun rises. If we make it at 8:50, we got the sun there. There's the sun's just coming up at on January 9th, but there is Venus just above the horizon. Let's advance it a little more, and you can see it just kind of skirts along the horizon there. Oh, and we're into February, and there's Jupiter and Saturn coming out on the other side of the sun. What else to see in the night sky? Right now, the International Space Station is making some fairly nice appearances. There was one earlier tonight. Tomorrow, there's a very nice pass at 5:14. On the 4th, there's one at 6:04. On the 5th, 5:16, and on the 7th, at 5:18. And I think that's all we're going to do with that. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here. And went back to the beginning. We'll clean this up in editing.
What do you see when you look at the moon? When it's full and round, do you see a balloon? Does it look like a cookie with the bite taken out? What do you see when you look at the moon? It follows a path every month.
Okay, these are the, despite what my graphic says, which I didn't change, this is the lunar phases for December. On December the 7th, it's at third quarter. On December the 14th, the moon is new, which means you won't be able to see it. On December 21st, it's at first quarter. And then right at the end of the month, on December the 29th, the moon is full. Full moon in December is also known as the cold moon, has other names like the long night moon and the midwinter moon. Now, excuse me, just gonna have a drink here. For this month's moon feature, rather than picking something you can see with a telescope, I picked something you can see with your naked eye, and that is the lunar rabbit. The lunar rabbit is the result of a phenomenon we call pareidolia. It's where we look at a random pattern of something and see something familiar. In this case, a rabbit, or another example with the moon is the man in the moon. There's the old man of the mountain, or Jesus burnt onto a piece of grilled cheese. This is pareidolia. And so we're going to talk about the lunar rabbit. And this is it here. There's its ears, there's its head, there's its body. It's made up of a lot of parts. A lot of the seas or the maria on the moon. The ears are the sea of fertility and the sea of nectar. The head, this part here, is the sea of tranquility and the sea of serenity. And the body is Merimbium, or the sea of rains, this here, and the ocean of storms, which is down here. There's many legends about rabbits in many cultures. In fact, the Chinese have a legend of a rabbit on the moon, and they even have named the 2 rovers that they landed on the moon after said rabbit. Now, I'm just going to tip the moon over a little bit here, and you can kind of see it a little better. And why didn't that work? I had better pictures. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, by tipping the moon, you can kind of make out the rabbit in its body here, even in a third quarter, pardon me, a waxing gibbous form, you can make out the rabbit. There's many stories, many cultures. I was looking for one that would associate for the peoples around here, and I found one actually on Wikipedia. And it's a Cree legend about a young rabbit who wanted a ride to the moon. And the only creature that would do that would be the crane. So he picked up the rabbit in its legs, but the weight of the rabbit stretched the crane's legs. When they reached the moon, the rabbit touched the crane's head with a bloody paw and left a red mark, which it carries on its head to this day. And on clear nights, the rabbit can still be seen riding on the moon. So if you go out right now and look up, you can see the lunar rabbit, or Wilma Flintstone. We were talking about that before this session started. Okay, the constellation we're going to talk about today is Cassiopeia, the Vein Queen. So there's Cassiopeia. It's the big W in the sky. It's found in the northern sky, and it's almost exactly opposite the Big Dipper with the Polaris, the pole star in the middle. Last month we talked about the legend of Perseus, who rescued Andromeda from the sea monster. Well, it was Cassiopeia who said her beauty was rivaled that of the gods. It ticked the gods off, so they had her sacrifice her daughter to the sea monster. However, Perseus arrived just in time and saved Andromeda, destroyed the sea monster, and their stories are now told in the sky. So I always pick a couple objects in these constellations to highlight. They're both telescopic objects. So if you have a small telescope or a large telescope, the first one is going to be this guy here. And actually, if you have a good pair of binoculars and a steady hand, you can actually see this too. It's called the Owl Cluster. And the other one I'm going to talk about is WZ Cassiopeia, which is a carbon star. So this is the Owl Cluster, NGC 457. I like this object if we're doing a viewing with school kids or something like that, and there's no real good targets to look at. I always like to pick this one because it actually looks kind of like an owl through a telescope. You can see its eyes there, its wings, its body. It's an open cluster. It's about 7,900 light years from Earth. It's also been dubbed since the 80s the ET cluster because I guess the eyes kind of looks like ET calling home. Anyway, it's a favorite object for public events. And the other object is WZ Cassiopeia, which is a carbon star, and it is this guy right here, this red one. Carbon stars are red giants in the final stages of their life, and their upper atmosphere contains a large amount of carbon, which gives it a very red hue, sometimes compared to a ruby, sometimes compared to blood. Various carbon stars have various shades of red, some very, very deep red, some lighter. This one looks almost orangey in the picture, but the last time I looked at it through my telescope, it looked very, very red, almost like a ruby. Alistair, do you have anything to add?
Actually, yes, I do. I was delightfully surprised when you said WZ Cass. It's one of my favorite objects in Cassiopeia. I was looking years ago for an open star cluster, and WZ Cass happened to be along the way. And so I just stumbled on it. And it was the that nice deep red, and the star just to the left of it here on your image. Here it looks pale blue, but in my scope at low power, it was a really beautiful, not deep blue, but blue sky blue. And just it's
Okay.
like, wow, this is the find of the night. It's not the year.
Excellent. Okay.
Great choice.
All right. Last month, one of the highlights I was talking about and was hoping for clear skies was on the morning of November the 13th. So, and on the morning of November the 13th, it's kind of tough to see here, but we had Venus up here, the moon in the middle, and Mercury right down there. And this is a picture I just shot out on my front street. And I've got another view here where I labeled the parts. And it was just a really pretty sight. I went out and had a look, and then my wife said, why don't you go take a picture? I wasn't planning on taking a picture, but I said, oh, okay, why not? So I ran in, grabbed my camera, didn't even use a tripod. I just held it as steady as I could and snapped this picture. And then this is just a blow up of that scene. So there's Mercury down there, kind of tough to see, but it's there. You know, very, very thin crescent moon, smiling away. And then up here, it's Venus. It's a very nice picture. I'm glad the skies were clear, because the weather forecast that night before on the 11 o'clock news was saying it was going to be cloudy that night. And I was thinking, well, of course it's going to be cloudy, because anytime I want to see anything, it's always cloudy. So other highlights from the month. So as I mentioned before, Venus is shining bright before sunrise early in the month, but it is starting to get harder and harder to see early in the morning. The waning crescent moon is close to Venus on December the 12th. I'm going to try and have a look at that. There is a meteor shower, the Geminid meteor shower, late evening of the 13th, early morning of the 14th. The moon is new, so it's not a factor. I will talk about that in a little bit. And then we have what I call triple world score on December the 21st. And what do I mean by that? Well, we got three things going on all at the same time. We've got the winter solstice. We've got the lunar X, which I always get excited about. Don't ask me why, I just do. I think it's neat. And we have the very, very close conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Look at dusk. Don't wait till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, because it would have upset. So you got to look at dusk. So first off, the Geminids. There's constellation Gemini. This is the radiant. This is the point of the sky that the meteors seem to come from. And then they just go all over the sky. The originator of the Gemini meteor shower is actually not a comet, as most meteor showers are. It's actually an asteroid called 3200. I hope I'm saying this right, Pantheon. On an average night, without the moon, after midnight, you can see 50 or more. And if the peak happens to come while it's dark here, some years people have seen up to 120 in an hour, so like 2 a minute. Although of course they're not going to come like clockwork. They could come. You might not see anything for 10 minutes, and then you'll see a whole bunch, and then nothing. So it's a pretty good meteor shower. It's pretty reliable, and like I say, there's no moon this year. The winter solstice. The Earth goes around the sun with our tilted axis of 23.5 degrees. The northern hemisphere, part we're in, is tilted away from the sun, and it gets the least amount of light. It's the astronomical beginning of winter, although the meteorological people say winter began yesterday. It is the longest nights of the year and the shortest days. Great for sky watching. The winter sky has a lot of bright stars. And the sun rises very low in the southeast and sets low in the southwest. Now, Luca Vanzella, who's actually with us tonight, snapped this, or I wouldn't say snapped this picture, he put this picture together over several months of the sunset path of the sky of the sun over Edmonton. So the one in the middle, this is spring and fall. One over here, this is winter, or this is summer, setting off in the northwest. And here is on the winter solstice, where the sun rises low and sets far into the southwest. It was picked as an astronomical picture of the day, and the story how Luca did this is on that page. If you just Google astronomy picture of the day and then Luca Vanzella, it'll pop up, and you can read all about it. Luca does does many pictures like this, and they're really a work of art, I must say. The lunar X is visible on the 21st. Look around 9:30 p.m. It's a very short-lived event. Oh, let's see, there's the X, and there's also the lunar V, which is up here. Only lasts about 4 hours, and what it is, it's sunlight shining on the tops of craters near the terminator. The terminator is the area between light and dark on the moon. So there's my arrow for the X, and there's my arrow for the V. I just think it's kind of neat. The first time I saw it, I was really thrilled. And so every time the lunar X is visible over Edmonton, it's visible every month somewhere in the world, but because it only lasts 4 hours, it's only visible over Edmonton every 2 or 3 months. So, and then finally, the great conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. This is a blow up of a screen grab I took off the Starry Night, where Saturn is there. You can kind of make out the rings, and there's Jupiter. Now, they may look far apart, but actually they are 0.6 minutes apart. Now, how big is 6 minutes? 6 minutes of arc. There are 60 minutes of arc in a degree. The moon is half a degree across. So this is very, very, very close. Easily visible in any telescope in the same field, which is very rare for a conjunction usually, unless you have a wide field. I'm hoping it's clear that night. I'm going to be watching the two planets come together over the days in December. And just to prove that point, this is a picture I took earlier tonight. Oh, Bruce is joining us here. This is a picture I took earlier tonight about 5:18. There's Saturn, kind of creamy color. There's Jupiter. I'm going to take a series of pictures over the coming months as they come together and then pass one another. And then this is just a wider angle. So don't miss it. It's the first conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn since 2000. And it's the closest conjunction since 1623. It's the closest conjunction to be visible since 1226. There'll be another similar conjunction in 2080. I'm not going to be around for that. And as I mentioned in the astronomy section, or in the planetarium section, the moon is going to enter the scene on the 17th. Now, in ancient times, conjunctions were seen as good and bad omens. I'm hoping this conjunction is a good omen that we're almost done COVID-19. Okay, I'll do the space history part here. And my screen is frozen. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, this happened this month in space. Every month I do a little historical look back at something that happened in space, of an anniversary of such. In this particular month, the only provision is that anniversary has to be divisible by 5. Oh, there we go. Okay, so earlier in, well, not this month, in November, SpaceX launched its first official crewed ferry trip to the International Space Station using the SpaceX Dragon. It was the second crewed flight. The first was just a test. This one carried 4 astronauts up to the space station, 3 from NASA, 1 from Japan. They're going to stay up there for about 6 months. It's part of the commercial program that NASA's running, having commercial suppliers provide the taxi service up to the ISS while they concentrate on doing exploration, which they're going to try to do with the Orion and the Space Launch System, etc. And before that, the Space Shuttle here, and of course Soyuz, the Russian, were used to ferry equipment and personnel up to the space station. And during the Apollo program, after landing on the moon and then taking off again, the ascent stage of the lunar module would come up to the command module still in orbit and dock with it. And there's a picture of the command module taken from the lunar module. What all this has in common, and where I'm going here, is they all use a technique called rendezvous in space, or rendezvous in orbit. And that's what we're going to talk about. The flights of Gemini 6 and 7 on December the 15th, 1965. Gemini 6, seen here, and Gemini 7, seen there, accomplished the very first rendezvous in space. Now, the idea of using rendezvous for Gemini, it was born out of the mission plan for Apollo, which was to fly one large booster, the Saturn V, carrying 2 spacecraft to the moon, the lunar module and the command module. The lunar module would separate from the command module, land on the moon, and then come back and rendezvous and dock with the command module. Now, in order to make sure this all worked, they had to try all these techniques out in Earth orbit. Rendezvous was very complicated. It's counterintuitive to the pilots. In the early days of the Gemini program, they would, particularly Gemini 3 and Gemini 4, they would try and close in on the second stage booster of the rocket that got them into orbit. And they found that as they moved thrusted toward the booster, that they would actually get further and further away from it, which is counterintuitive. You think, well, we're heading toward it, we should be getting closer, but we're not. We're going farther away. And that is a part of orbital mechanics, where if you want to get closer to something, you have to slow down, drop into a lower orbit, and then catch up, and then adjust accordingly. If you want to fall behind something, you speed up and go into a higher orbit, and you pull away. So this happened on December the 15th. Oops. Now, the original mission of Gemini 6 was to not to rendezvous with Gemini 7. It was to rendezvous with this thing, which was an Agena target vehicle, which was launched on top of an Atlas. And there's the Agena right on the top. and it was launched 90 minutes before the scheduled launch of Gemini 6, basically the time it takes one orbit. They would put this thing into orbit and then launch Gemini 6 as it came over again, and they would catch up with it and rendezvous and dock with it. But on their flight, the rocket failed. The Agena ended up not in orbit, but at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, so the mission was scrubbed. Then they came up with another idea. Gemini 7 was the next mission on the flight plan, and it was intended as a 14-day long endurance mission. So what they did, they fitted a transponder, which is this thing here, onto the front of the Gemini spacecraft, Gemini 7 spacecraft, and the Gemini 6 here. I'll just go back here. This is the radar for Gemini 6 there. That's that white thing on the front. There's a transponder. So I can tell the two apart. They redid the flight plan that instead of rendezvousing and docking with the Agena, they would rendezvous with the Gemini 7. They couldn't dock with it because there's no provision for docking two Geminis together. But they got as close as 1 foot away from one another. Originally, Gemini 6, Gemini 7 was launched on December the 4th. Gemini 6 was originally going to be launched on the 12th, but the mission was aborted. The booster had actually ignited, but a loose plug came out and the booster shut down. So they rescheduled the launch a couple days later for the 15th. Now, one thing I should point out is with the recent Dragon flight, they took a rather leisurely 1 day to rendezvous and dock with the space station. Gemini 6 took 4 orbits to catch up with Gemini 7 and rendezvous with it because they wanted to simulate an Apollo mission. Once the ascent stage leaves the lunar surface and leaves the descent, or the ascent stage leaves the descent stage behind, the descent stage having most of the power and the consumables, they have a very limited time of power and consumables in the ascent stage. So they can't be drifting around for a day or so in orbit waiting to dock. So the Gemini 6 did a 4 orbit docking or rendezvousing with the Gemini 7. So I got a few more pictures here. Some of these are quite famous. You can see, see these straps, cords hanging from the back. That's just an artifact from the separation of the spacecraft from the booster. And these things just kind of tore off and were hanging in space. And when the spacecraft Gemini 7 would maneuver, sometimes they would hear something hitting the outside of the spacecraft. And what was that? And it turned out these straps would flip back if the craft was maneuvering and firing its thrusters. Obviously, when it's not firing its thrusters, there's nothing to cause them to fall back and hit the spacecraft. But anyway, when Gemini 6 showed up and saw all these straps hanging behind the spacecraft, they answered the question what was going on. Now, I included this because there was a little bit of humor between and competition between the crews. Now, Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford, who were in Gemini 6, and also Jim Lovell, who was in Gemini 7 with Commander Frank Borman, they were all graduates of Annapolis Naval Academy. Frank Borman was an Air Force man, and he was a graduate of West Point. And they play a football game every year. And this was a poke that Wally Schirra and Stafford decided to make a poke at Borman, a good and true West Point man, that the Navy football team was going to beat the Army football team in this upcoming game. Okay, I've got a little movie I spliced together of some of the maneuvers, and I'll just play that here. I was going to point out a few things in the video. First off, the shaking was not the result of the spacecraft shaking. It was they filmed it at 6 frames a second and projected it at 18. So that's what the shaking's about. But I don't know if you might have noticed one of the views, you could actually see one of the astronauts in the window of the other spacecraft looking out the window. And just to sort of pat myself on the back, if anyone ever plays Kerbal Space Program, you know how tough it is to rendezvous and dock using the orbital mechanics in that game. And this is a little space station I built, about 6 or 7 launches, sending up various pieces and bolting them all together. Heavens Above is a great resource. It shows you what's in the sky, various satellite passes, various ISS passes, etc. And with that, that's all I've got. So, is there any questions?
No questions, but this is Alistair saying thank you.
Yes, thanks very much for putting that together again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, so the next time we're going to meet is on January the 6th. And we'll see what we talk about then. So.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Were you going to talk about the upcoming cafes?
Oh, yeah. Okay, we have a cafe, how to use a telescope. You know, if you've got a new telescope, or even if you've got an old telescope and you're having trouble using it, we're going to have a virtual cafe. I don't know how that's going to work. You know, I've been to the ones where we're actually there and we can actually, work with the actual telescope. But we'll give it a best shot. The details are on our website. And that is early in January, is it not, Luca?
Yes, it is on I think the 3rd Wednesday.
3rd Wednesday, okay. Yeah, I had a guy ask me about that, contact me through the president email, and I recommended that, and he said, thanks very much, he's going to give it a go, so.
January 20th, yeah.
January 20th, okay. We're giving a used telescope over here. We don't even know the make. We haven't touched. I'm just looking at a chat here.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't touched it yet. Haha. Okay. Well, maybe Colleen, you can.
January 20th.
January 20th. Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay.
I help out a lot with the scopes, and you are not the only person to have had trouble. Lots of people with various types of telescopes have a myriad of little hurdles to overcome, but the good news is almost always the hurdles are actually pretty small, and it just comes down to the fact that most people with their first telescope have 0 experience. So even something that's fairly simple is just not at all intuitive. And so it usually just takes a little point here and point there, and you'll be on your way.
Okay. Also, I record these things and I'll post it on our YouTube channel in a few days. Do a little bit of editing, take out the oops and stuff. And by the way, during that little movie, was there a burst of static going over the air? Did you guys hear that? Or was that just on my end?
Nope.
Oh,
I didn't hear anything.
No.
Oh, yeah. Well, it darn near blew my ears out. And that's why I kind of tore my headset off, because it was just a burst of static. So when I repost it, I'll put the little music that I created. Well, I didn't create the music. I just stole the music from the soundtrack,
Yeah.
which I thought
Yeah,
fit.
we got about
And,
2 seconds worth of normal
Music.
sound, and then it just
Okay. Yeah, I had trouble today. Like, I'm hearing you through the speaker on my computer. I'm not hearing you through my headset. But I discovered that too close to the start of this, so I didn't want to start messing around, like rebooting or something like that. That's just a lesson learned, right?
Hmm.
updating 2%.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway.
That's
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, no other questions, I'll say goodnight. Bruce, I hear your mouth is moving, but I don't hear anything. No, nothing. Okay.
Oh,
That's because he's mute.
Trying. Can you hear me?
I can
Yep.
hear you now. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Jeff, your burst of static, you reminded me of there's a scene in The Fifth Element where the guy
Okay.
has a bug on the president, and the president kills the bug with his shoe, and the guy's headphones fly
Oh, yeah.
off. It's just hilarious. Element. Sounds like that's what you got.
Yeah, that's probably what it looked like, because it took me by surprise. Like,
I'll find a gift and send it to you. I'm sure it's
okay, sure. Sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for stopping by. Appreciate that. And hopefully we'll see you guys next month. And oh, by the way, have a happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, COVID, whatever, you know.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
I'll be glad when this year is over.
and keep an eye out on the Facebook page or the Astro list if we're heading out to see the Geminids. We often do one night on either side, well, especially the night before as a contingency, just in case the
Yeah.
conditions are so-so. And I mean, the nice thing about meteor watching is it's very easy to be 2 meters apart, and you're just looking up at the sky on your deck chair. So
And sorry,
nice
that-
activity.
Yeah, for sure.
That would just be on the Facebook page then?
Yep.
on the Astro list.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll see you later.
Yep.
Great
Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Great stuff on Gemini. That was wonderful.